Hello. In this video, I'm going to offer some suggestions about how to use and make your own rub for cooking with meats, seafoods, tofu, or vegetables or fruits. I will provide some tips for mixing your spices and using the rub, and then I will offer a specific recipe that you can try. You might want to make your own because you just want to explore, or you might want to specifically try to keep your sugars reduced or your salts or both. Rubs in general tend to have sugars, and some of them have high amounts because sugar is a flavor enhancer and it will caramelize, which helps to give a nice color and texture to the food. But you might want to keep your sugars down. So adding just a little bit of sugar will help to enhance the flavor and provide some caramelization, but it will also keep the sugar intake a bit lower if you need to be concerned about that. Caramelization is something that you do want to happen with the sugars, but you also want to be careful since these rubs have sugar in them because sugars will burn over 350 degrees. So depending on your cooking method, you may want to use a thermometer or just think about not using a rub specifically. You could make this recipe, but omit the sugar, and then it's not technically a rub anymore, and it won't get that caramelization, but it would be safe to cook at high grilling temperatures or in the broiler even. If you have a thermometer though, you can easily cook at 350 or below, depending on what your recipes might suggest. And medium on the stove top, medium on a gas grill are both safe temperatures generally. You can also set your oven to an appropriate temperature. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And if you are using a grill, another thing to keep in mind is if you keep the food away from the direct heat, that will also prevent it from burning, because over the direct heat, it's going to actually and possibly be touched by the flame, and it's going to have the most heat in that specific place. So use a thermometer if you've got one and keep an eye on things. There are both liquid rubs and dry rubs. Both are possible. The one I offer here is a dry rub, but I also offer suggestions for how to turn it into a liquid rub if you'd like. The difference is that a dry rub is all spices and it provides some flavor as well as some color, because the rubs usually have some colorful seasonings like paprika and chilies in them. But they also help to create a kind of crunchiness since the spices are dry. If you use a liquid rub, you basically are using something that has a liquid added, or you add it yourself. Something like Worcestershire, a lemon or a lime juice or a vinegar will help to enhance the flavor, but they will also evaporate. So you can also get some of that crispiness, though probably not as much as you would get with a plain dry rub. And if you use an oil like olive oil or a canola oil, something that will be fine and won't start to smoke at 350, then you will be able to hold the spices on the food better, but you won't get that crispy flavor. So this is the recipe that I am recommending today. You can use all of the ingredients if you'd like. You can use some of them. If you only use the ones that are not listed as optional, it will create a nice, colorful and flavorful rub for you. But depending on your preferences, you can also add some of the others, and you can increase amounts depending on what you like. Know that if you do paprika, the sweet paprika will give it a sweetness as well as color. Smoked paprika, if you aren't cooking on the grill, will give it a smoky flavor, and a hot paprika will give it a little bit of heat. And then using cumin as well as turmeric and mustard powder, all of those will give the rub a little bit of a sharpness, whereas the coriander is also going to be a bit sweet, just like the paprika. So know what you like and what you're interested in. I think that a little bit of a balance is a good thing in a spice blend. My favorite spice blends are the ones that give you a little bit of heat, a little bit of sharpness, a little bit of sweetness, because then all of your taste buds get to enjoy the flavor. So you don't have to put all of the sharp spices in if you're wary of that, but you can do all of them if you'd like. The only spice I have not used in my spice blend today is the mustard powder, because I have used the cumin, I've used some turmeric, and so there is definitely some sharpness to my rub that it doesn't really necessarily need the mustard powder. But if you skip the turmeric, then you'll get some sharpness from the mustard powder, as well as some color, because it's a yellow color. This is the spice blend that I made. It includes the sweet paprika and some chili powder, which give it a nice deep red flavor. And then the turmeric is going to give it some orange as well. And if you did some mustard powder instead, you'd have a little bit of yellow in yours. Once you've mixed your rub, if you're going to use a dry rub, you can go ahead and just mix it in. Make sure that you have prepped your food, however you're going to cook it. If you're going to cook full chicken fillets or salmon fillets, or if you're going to chop things up for kebabs or other kinds of grilling or roasting, just prepare your food so that it's ready to cook, and then go ahead and put some rub on it. Make sure that you put enough on that you cover the entire surface of the food. That way the entire amount will get as much flavor as possible. Today I'm using tofu and cremini mushrooms. The mushrooms don't really need the color. They don't show a lot of the color, since cremini mushrooms are a dark brown, but the tofu has the color now of the spices, which is nice because tofu, like chicken and potatoes, is a plain white color. So the rubs can give some nice color to your food along with the flavor. Once you've got your food ready to go, you can let it stand for about 20 minutes and go ahead and cook according to the instructions, or you can refrigerate it for several hours. I'm going to refrigerate mine for about an hour, and then I'm going to put them on kebab skewers and cook them in the oven instead of on the grill today at about 350 degrees. I'll cook them for probably 25 minutes. Usually tofu in the oven at 350 takes about 20 to 25 minutes to cook. But follow the directions for whatever it is that you're cooking. And then I'm going to eat mine with some roasted asparagus, because I got some local asparagus that's fresh in season. I could put the rub on the asparagus too if I wanted to, but I'm going to let the asparagus go plain this time, because it's got nice flavor on its own since it's fresh and in season locally. If you want to try a wet rub, you can just take this recipe and you can mix in a couple of tablespoons of either a liquid like Worcestershire sauce, or lemon juice or lime juice, or maybe soy sauce, tamari, or liquid aminos. Any of those would mix in, and you can rub that onto the food, or you could use an oil. Just make sure that the oil will cook at 350 and won't smoke. Generally, something like a canola oil is fine. And most of the refined oils will cook at 350 without smoking. Just make sure that it is a refined oil that is going to be tolerant of a 350 degree heat. So there are many things you can do with this. You can use it on meat, seafood, tofu, veggies. You can even use it on fruits like pineapple, tomatoes, or peppers that you might cook. And just make sure you prepare your food first. I would recommend that if you are making a wet rub, that you only mix in the liquid for what you're going to use, because if you have remaining dry spice left over, you could store it easily. But if you mix it, you're going to want to refrigerate it and use it within probably a week or two. But if you mixed everything, you could always go ahead and refrigerate it and then use it promptly. I needed about a tablespoon of the dry spice for a pound of cubed tofu. So if you're thinking in terms of a pound of meat, for example, probably a tablespoon for every pound. If you're cubing it like I did, you might not need quite as much if you're using whole fillets. And then with vegetables, it depends on how much surface area. Some vegetables have more surface area that need to be covered. So think about that. The mushrooms, it was a half a pound of mushrooms, and I used probably about 3/4 of a tablespoon of the rub for those. And so yeah, it really depends. Probably for every pound though of surface area of vegetable or meat or seafood that you're going to eat, you can think in terms of a tablespoon. You can try this with many things. You can also explore and find different recipes in cookbooks or on the web. Just know that you shouldn't be afraid to reduce sugars. If you want to keep your sugar intake low, you can reduce your salts if you want to mostly add salt at the table. And you can always omit or reduce spices that you're not keen on. I do that a lot with particular kinds of spices so that I can, if I make my own spice blends, I can make them the way I prefer them. So I hope this video has been helpful and that you're able to enjoy some foods with rubs as we go into the summer season for grilling and the season of many different local harvests.